This one time, I was living at a place and we had a wood burning stove for the heat, for the house heat. And I was sitting in there one evening just with the fire burning and just sitting relaxing. I was drinking some liqueur, just relaxed. And I remembered about a suicide that was at the public middle school when I was growing up. I went to Catholic school, but in our same general area, the, the Pound junior high, a kid committed suicide. Now, I didn't know him, but some of my neighbors knew who he was and stuff. And I was reflecting back about that, thinking, wondering if there was any sort of lingering ghost or something regarding that. So there I am, drinking my liqueur, very relaxed, feeling good, and I put my mind into it. And it seemed like there was, like some unresolved energies about that. So I, again, put my mind into it, and I somehow separated the soul from the the ghosts, if you will, and saw it to the light, as it were, and just let it go. And this entity came to me and said, "Hey, you can keep that, you know." And I didn't know what they were talking about. And they said, "The ghost, the vehicle, you can keep that." And I was a little confused, but as the being explained to me, it was essentially a vehicle with no animating force. And so I had no knowledge of anything like that, so I was like, cool, I took it. And in my mind's eye, it had no head. And I just thought maybe I was visualizing poorly or whatever. And I visualized a head on this thing. And within a moment, this brilliant white winged lion came to my mind's eye and ripped the head off this thing. And directly told me, "You never put a head on a golem." I was shocked, frankly. But the idea is that if you put a head on a golem, it can essentially think and run amok, and then karmically, it's bad for business, if you will. And the instruction was to put a single eye on the head instead of the head, a single eye, and the single eye represented essentially like a translator, so that any instruction I would give it would be translated through the God ethics of the God mind. And if you start dealing with spirits and things, sometimes your language, you have to be very, very, very careful with your language. Any gaps or being lax with language can cause problems, because some of these beings are very clever and they will cause problems just for that reason, because they can, and they're insulted and they feel like, actually I can't speak for them, but I know that from working with any sort of entities, you have to be very, very skillful with language. So the idea with this single eye is that my instructions, whatever they would be interpreted with what would be general understanding. It wouldn't read into things and think for itself. So this was pretty peculiar, pretty peculiar. And the instruction, I mean, like, what do you do with something like this? The instruction was that to task it with impossible things would cause it to become more dense, more able to do things in the real world. So, I mean, like, what do you do with something like that? I had no way of knowing. So I had it try and move a picture through a wall. Just kind of put it on autopilot and doing that. Like, at the time, I was just like, well, I don't know. What else do you do with that? So I didn't think much of it. It was kind of, it was more than kind of, it was definitely unusual experience. But I just kind of let it go. And then, several years later, I was tattooing, and this lady, one of my regular customers, came in, and she was talking about, she had gone to an auction and bought. She thought it was this mirror she had bought, but her house was a new build, or like she was a second owner, but it was less than 10 years old, this house, and all of her roommates were having these haunted things happen. I said, "Oh, you don't say." And she was pretty sure it came with this mirror she got at an auction. I said, "Oh, I can put my mind into that if you'd like." "Oh, would you? You know, you could come over at this time and do this and the other thing." I said, "No, no, I don't need to go there. I don't need anything like that. You know, I'll let me, whatever." So that afternoon, I put my mind into it, and sure enough, there seemed to be this this entity, if you will, who, as I perceived it, would stare into the mirror, and it was this vanity feedback loop kind of thing. And I I set the spirit free, if you will, but I left the shell or the vehicle attached to the mirror. I said, well, whatever, spooky mirror. It'll be kind of fun, So a week goes by, maybe 2 weeks, and I see her and I say, oh, hey, how'd that work out? Did the weird stuff stop? And she said, it did for all but one of us. And I said, oh, I have a theory, that cutting to the chase of the story, and see, well, what is it? And I explained to her what I just explained to you, essentially, and said, well, I think that, so the shell there is being animated by her fear. Her fear is actually animating this ghost. I could take care. I could take it if you want. And she said, oh, would you? Would I have to do anything for you? Would I have to pay you or anything? I was just thinking, pay me, my great reward. I said, no. So I did, and oh man. I mean, it was just in my mind's experience, but that was like having a 200-pound 2-year-old. It was a lot to deal with, in fact, which was pretty peculiar because I had very little experience with this sort of thing. It wasn't the sort of thing I didn't really know. And I'll tell you, after that, I didn't go willy-nilly I didn't try and collect any ghosts, if you will, after realizing how difficult this one was. So I sort of reined it in, and I stuck it on this trail, up in some forest. And I instructed it not to injure anybody, but it could be spooky, haunt the little area there, because it was a little curve. I remembered it. And I just kind of let it go, the weirdest thing. So then I had two. And I had heard about other ghosts and stuff like that, but I just let them be. I didn't really mess with them, because after that one I saw how very serious it could be. This is so weird, I don't usually tell these stories, and then I'm telling them on YouTube is really I just feel inspired to start telling some stories. And these are all true. I'm telling you them true as I experienced them. So, how to keep a golem. What to do with a golem. So years go by, and this fellow told me about a murder. A murder that he was upstairs. The story was, it was this cocaine dealing woman. And her boyfriend was having an argument with the dealer that she got it from. And as the guy said, he could hear this whole thing going on in the vents. And as the story goes, the dealer just whipped out a knife and slashed his throat right there and killed him, right on the scene. Now this guy I knew, he said after that the doors would bust open, and he got this real sense of fury, like, why did I die? This sort of thing. Oh my gosh. So I was a little bit now this is really peculiar, because this isn't like, again, this is just so unusual, but I'm telling you truthfully as I experienced it. So I put my mind into it, and I got this fellow, the vehicle, but when I set it free, when I set the soul free, these two red beings came and took it away. It wasn't like this light blue light thing. It was like two red beings came and took the soul. And it seemed ominous, like he was going to the oven. I felt like after that I was like, oh shit. And because of the whole bursting through the door thing, I stuck it up on the mountain to, like, the wind bursts. Like, sometimes you'll find, in my belief, you'll find genies and stuff where the wind is or the elements are really wild and hard, you'll find these sort of things riding it. So I stuck this thing up there, and I kind of said, hey, would y'all kind of watch out for this character thing? I don't really know, but I figured if he was violent, just to ride the wind like that, boom, boom, choo, choo. And so this went on. I just kind of let it be, it's way easier to put these things on autopilot. And after my experience with that second one, I didn't want anything to do with some sort of violent uh, vehicle. You know what I mean? That violence I was actually kind of aware of and wary of, but I knew enough to put it to apply, send it to where it was going right away, not fuss with it. So I did that, and time goes by, and I didn't think much of it. I did feel a little bit guilty, if you will, because I figured, well, maybe that spirit soul could have learned a bigger part of its lesson while in the ghost vehicle and not been subject to that the fires, as it were. But it was so weird because the genie, as I was able to interact with them, were really, really happy to have that thing up there. I don't know if they rode it like a surfboard, if it was their pet. I really don't know what went on with them in that, but they seemed really, really thankful for it. And I just kind of let it go at that, who doesn't want genies on their side? I mean, as long as they're not running amok, causing problems, it seems like, why not be friends? So that was that. And then much, much later, this was just like maybe last year or something. I don't remember exactly what was going on in my mind, but somehow or another there was a reconnection with that soul that was taken away. And that kind of the ghost vehicle thing, the ghost I had, the golem, I guess I don't really call them golems because like I just don't have conversations about this stuff with people enough to say, okay, this is what we were talking about and this is what we mean and all that. So, but it's what I mean, the golem. So it was like the soul had been, I don't know if the time on the mountain with the genie evolved this thing to a point where it could help us send some of this energy or what, but a big part of that psychic architecture that was this ghost thing was reunited with that soul, and it seemed to cancel out most of the architecture from the ghost, and it went on its holy way, I guess. It wasn't like it was being taken back to somewhere evil, and I felt relieved, frankly, because somebody's like soul's destiny, like I didn't realize you could maybe mess that up. But I was feeling a little bit like, oh well, won't make that mistake again. And but then after this, I said, oh, that's good. But part of me felt bummed out because I always was like, oh, I have this like this great thing I could haunt someone's house on purpose if I wanted to. These other ones, I guess I probably could. I still want to, frankly, part of me just to see what happens, but I really don't. I mean, with responsibility comes responsibility. With unusual situations like this comes responsibility of being ethically upright. I mean, I'll laugh and joke, but at the end of the day, I'm seriously the God rule. The standard of true creation. So, what did we learn today, kids? We learned that maybe that single eye that's on the pyramid is this idea of God's interpretive force. Because God is so far beyond us, but us interacting with the world, we have this sense of an ethical standard that can be applied universally. And I think that's really what that eye represents. What do we do with that? I don't really know, man. I really don't know. But if you have a golem, don't put a head on it. And really, I just wouldn't really mess with any of this stuff, frankly. I don't know if telling you this. If you think that's just fiction and fantasy, that's fine. In fact, that's probably better you think that. but it's actually true. And I don't think people should dabble with it. Should I even be telling this stuff? I don't know. I'm going to post it though. I'm going to post it and just see what happens because I've got so many stories and they're so good. Like, I mean, weird stuff happens.